Exactly 1 month ago, the two prosecutors leading the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation into Donald Trump and his business practices abruptly resigned. Those two prosecutors had been leading a case that was centered around the allegation that Trump was inflating the value of his assets in order to obtain favorable loans from banks. And by all accounts, it was an investigation that appeared to be gaining momentum. But according to the reporting at the time, those two very high-profile prosecutors resigned after the newly elected DA, tasked with overseeing the case, quote, indicated that he had doubts about moving forward with the case against Trump. Now, tonight, the New York Times has published the resignation letter from one of those prosecutors, and it is remarkable. This is the resignation letter of Special Assistant District Attorney Mark Pomerantz, sent to the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg last month. Quote, as you know from our recent conversations and presentations, I believe that Donald Trump is guilty of numerous felony violations of the penal law in connection with the preparation and use of his annual statements of financial condition. The team that has been investigating Mr. Trump harbors no doubt about whether he committed crimes. He did. Mr. Pomerantz noted in his letter that the previous district attorney overseeing the case, quote, concluded that the facts warranted prosecution, and he directed the team to present evidence to a grand jury and to seek an indictment of Mr. Trump and other defendants as soon as reasonably possible, end quote. The letter then explained that the current district attorney, Alvin Bragg, decided not to seek criminal charges, at least not yet, and that the investigation has been suspended indefinitely. While Mr. Pomerantz did not question the district attorney's authority in making his decision or his sincerity in believing that it was the right call, he argues in the letter that, quote, a decision made in good faith may nevertheless be wrong. I believe that your decision not to prosecute Donald Trump now and on the existing record is misguided and completely contrary to the public interest, end quote. He continues, we believe that the prosecution would prevail if charges were brought and the matter were tried to an impartial jury. Whatever the risks of bringing the case may be, I am convinced that a failure to prosecute will pose much greater risk in terms of public confidence in the fair administration of justice. I fear that your decision means that Mr. Trump will not be held fully accountable for his crimes. I have worked too hard as a lawyer and for too long now to become a passive participant in what I believe to be a grave failure of justice. I therefore resign from my position as Special Assistant District Attorney, effective immediately. We should note, the current Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, has said that his office continues to conduct this investigation, and because of that, he's barred from commenting on it. President Trump, of course, denies the allegations of fraud. Mr. Pomerantz himself declined to comment about the letter to the New York Times. Joining us now is Barbara McQuade, the former United States Attorney. Barbara, good to see you tonight. You're the person we need to talk to about this. This is quite a remarkable development that this kind of letter would be written. It was probably not written to be leaked to the press. But what do you make of it?
It is a remarkable letter, Allie. You know, when these two prosecutors resigned abruptly as they did, I think most of us speculated that there was a difference of opinion as to the merits of this case and that they were leaving because Alvin Bragg had said that although the investigation was continuing, we know that the grand jury activity had abated. And so we knew that they were unhappy with the direction of the case. And now we see why. Although I'm not sure I agree with you that this wasn't written to be leaked to the press. It is in such detail. Certainly Alvin Bragg knew all of the reasons that Mr. Pomerantz was resigning. And so it seems like this one perhaps was written for the press, and maybe it was, I don't know who leaked it to the press, but it seems like someone who leaked it to the press perhaps had an agenda. And so I think that might be an interesting question as to why is this out in the public domain? What is it that Mark Pomerantz is trying to achieve? And it may be to put pressure either on Alvin Bragg or some other entity to pursue this case.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because in the letter, he talks about this being a failure of the justice system. He doesn't want to be party to that. He says that the risks of prosecuting or of not prosecuting are greater than the risks of prosecuting. So tell me, in the system, inside the system, this gets leaked, puts Alvin Bragg on his back feet. What exactly could happen as a result of this?
Well, I suppose, Alvin Bragg is an elected official, that he might feel political pressure to go forward. When people say, even your own very skilled, very experienced prosecutors are telling you have this case, you can't be too skittish. Now, you'll note there's nothing in the letter that accuses him of, misconduct or corruption or anything like that, just that they have a difference of opinion. But that Mr. Pomerantz is absolutely convinced, as well as his colleagues, that there is a crime here, and that not only can it be brought, but it should be brought. And so I suppose one goal for leaking this letter would be to put public pressure as an elected official on Alvin Bragg to take this step. I think it's also important to note, Ellie, that reasonable minds can disagree about whether charges should be brought. There are certain kinds of crimes that are very obvious to us. A bank robbery. We see the crime happen. We know the crime happened. The only question for trial really is whether this is the right defendant, whether this is the person who did it. In these fraud cases, it's much more challenging, because what it usually comes down to is knowledge and fraudulent intent. And unless a person confesses to you, that evidence is never going to be crystal clear. And so people will disagree as to how much is enough. How much inference are we going to ask a jury to make to conclude that, in this case, Donald Trump did know that these statements were false and lies? And so it may be that Alvin Bragg wants to amass more evidence before he's willing to get there. But what Mr. Pomerantz seems to be saying is, we've got all the evidence we're ever going to have. It's not going to get better. In fact, it's going to get worse as time passes, and now's the time to file this case. And so perhaps he's saying, if you won't, then perhaps the Southern District of New York will take note, or perhaps you could request that the Attorney General's office, the state Attorney General's office, get a referral and come in and take this case off your hands if you won't do it.